Hello to all
Hello.
the pilgrims and enthusiasts out there. My name is Kieran. This is another episode of the Camino Talks. And today I'd like to welcome our guest who has walked the Camino a number of times with us and is a fan, as you can see from her picture directly behind her there, Christine Patterson. Welcome, Christine. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Hello, Kieran. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Very, very well. All the better to be talking to you.
Yeah,
And you're joining us today from Scotland.
I am indeed. Yeah, yeah,
Fantastic. A long way from the Camino in Spain, but
yeah.
hopefully you can take us back there with some of your stories this afternoon.
Hopefully, yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. So, well, our first question I just wanted to get into was what has walking as a means of keeping fit and as a way of getting away from it all. What has that meant for you across your life?
Across my life, it was possibly necessity. As a child, I grew up in Glasgow. We didn't have a car, and there were buses, of course, but sometimes it was easier to walk than take two buses. And then when I went on to university in Edinburgh, I'm not pleading poverty, but we didn't have a lot of money, so we tended to walk rather than pay for bus fares. So I used to walk 2 miles to university every day, and I just loved it. And then, obviously, as an adult, my late husband and I spent many happy hours walking. We had dogs, we walked our dogs, we walked in the lakes, we walked locally, we walked with our children. One was an enthusiast and one was less so. As it happens, my maiden surname was Walker, so I feel as
Destined.
though I had to own that and actually get out and walk. I do think walking is really good for your mental health. I think it is something you can do without a lot of expense. You need a pair of trainers and put one foot in front of the other, and you can gradually build it up. And I suppose that's one of the things about the Camino. It is, I think, it's a joyous thing to train for. I also think it is something that you can do according to your fitness. You can take the distance and the Camino depending on your level of fitness. So, yeah, and you feel great and you meet lots of people. So, what's not to like?
What's not to like, indeed? I never really got behind a line that non-walkers, I suppose you'd call them, would regularly use with me is I don't understand why you would pick to go for a walk, get in a car, drive to a destination, get out and walk around the block if you want to go for a walk. It's not just about getting out and putting one foot in front of the other. It's the people you're with. It's what you see
Yeah,
along the way. It's
yeah,
it's intention as much as
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
half an hour of
absolutely.
exercise.
Yeah, yeah. And being in the moment. So,
Yep, absolutely. No matter who you're with, whether you're by yourself or with a group of people,
yeah,
it's extremely
yeah,
centering to be able to just be
yeah.
present. And look, if you told me before this call that you were a walker in your maiden life, then I would have prepared better for all of the walking stories. So
So,
what are the chances?
yeah. So,
Um, I want to quickly get into a topic that is reasonably important to follow the Camino as a business. We get a lot of women walkers going on the Camino, in particular solo women. For whatever reason they want to undertake the Camino, there are often a number of questions that our holiday success team are asked about the safety of the Camino and the setup for solo women traveling. Do you think that there are social barriers to women traveling the world by themselves? And if so, what are some of the kind of ways that you have navigated that in the past?
um, there could well be barriers for women traveling in parts of the world. My experience on the Camino is it is an absolute joy and delight. I never found it any barrier at all from um, from setting off on the train to go to my first Camino from Scotland to get down to Gatwick Airport, um, to flying out, I felt I was well looked after. Arriving in Spain with limited Spanish. And once I got there, I realised it was actually even more limited than the limitation I thought it was. But people couldn't have been more helpful. A delightful young man rolled my suitcase from the train station to my hotel in Oviedo, and his English was similar to my Spanish, but we were able to kind of communicate, and I was extremely grateful. I did use Follow the Camino. It was Jade who's booked my Caminos for me. And I spoke to her a lot, especially before the Camino Primitivo, which was the first one I did. I had loads of questions, and sometimes if I couldn't get Jade on the phone, I got Barbara, who actually answered all my questions, was really reassuring. And actually, I just thought it was on the Camino as a woman, on my own, it was wonderful. Now, if my Camino buddies are listening to this, they would say, well, you weren't really on your own after day one because you became a tag-along. So I met, well, I was hardly out of Oviedo, where I started the Primitivo from, when I met a lovely chap called Paul from Germany, and I've not heard from him since. And we walked a bit, and then we came to Well, and we met two people who were, Paul was a young man. I'm not casting any aspersions on the two gentlemen I met at that point, but they were more my vintage. And we walked to a coffee shop. I went for coffee, they went on, and I met up with them later in that day. And in between times, I met various people. Some people came to chat, others clearly want to just be on themselves or with their companions. The routes, the two that I've done, are extremely well marked, and you follow the shells. And my experience was, you were beginning to think, have I missed a shell? When one would appear. It was very reassuring. Yeah. And I think one of the beauties for women traveling on their own, if you want to be a woman solo traveler being absolutely solo, you can. If you want to be a woman traveling solo who wants to have companionship, some chats, who want to walk with people for part of the time or all of the time, that is available. And it seems to me that you meet your people, whatever that may be, on the Camino. Speaking to other people, my son did it before me. You meet the people that are going to be right for you, whatever that may mean.
Yeah, we get that feedback a lot. You may be alone on the Camino, but you're never lonely. There's always people out there.
Yeah.
And funny, you talk about meeting a younger gentleman and then two people more your vintage, as you put it. There is somebody for everybody, and there are people of all ages, stages, and no pun intended, walks of life out doing the Camino. So
yeah.
So all in all, you would say the Camino as a walking holiday destination, there's absolutely no question. It's very suitable for
safe.
solo women. Yeah.
Absolutely safe. Yeah.
Okay.
On the ones I've walked the Primitivo and the Finisterre, but reading, I've read quite a few blogs and things, and everybody says, in fact, one of the criticisms I've read recently of the Française is that there's too many people. So, but in terms of safety, all is well.
Okay, fantastic. And something being too popular must just be a bit of a sign as to how good it is and how many people want to be there. Have you done many other long distance hikes like the Camino in other parts of Europe or further afield?
No, I have not actually. I almost did the Camino del Norte this summer, but very sadly for me, I damaged my Achilles and had to cancel. So it is building up, not Camino ready yet, but definitely building up. So
all right, we'll get you back out there in no time then.
Yeah, hopefully next spring. Yeah.
So what is it about the Camino then that has been so appealing to you compared to just any other long distance walk you could have done? Scotland is known for its beautiful landscapes, its
Yeah.
lock walks. Why the Camino?
So I suppose my son, he did it when he graduated from university, and he did it in memory of a dead dad. And he met a young man from Mexico walking the Camino in memory of a dead dad. So, as I said, back to your previous question, you meet your people. I did it at a time of threshold. I had just retired from work, and I had been in teaching for 42 years. And I am a woman of faith, and it seemed to me that I wanted to take some time to pause and ponder, but at the same time, in the words of the prophet Jeremiah, to stand at the crossroads and choose a good path. And the Camino seemed a good path. I chose the Primitivo, partly because my son had done it and loved it, partly because the time fitted. I thought to be away for that length of time, to do my first walk on my own seemed about right. And it seemed, for also another real reason, not a real reason, but another reason was the joy for me as a teacher who always was told, can't complain about the holidays, but we were always told when we had to take them. And they were always in Scotland, July and the beginning of August. And the joy of having July and August at home and then going away in September was fantastic. So that was a really lovely time. And in fact, the weather was superb. So it wasn't ever too hot. Although I know that people on the Camino have had a different experience in September. But even by the time I'd finished, it was 29 degrees, sitting in the square at Santiago de Compostela. Yeah. So,
Sitting in the autumn sunshine, having had your
yeah, yeah,
2 months of summer in Scotland
yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
that's a pretty
yeah,
good
yeah,
culmination of it
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah. So, so I think really it felt to me like taking time out, time apart, time for herself, her space. So that's what I did to kind of think about what next in terms of my life at that point. So I felt it was really a real privilege to be able to do that because I know not everybody can. So yeah, that was kind of why I did it. So partly inspired by my son, and partly because it was a time of threshold, and I wanted to have time to pause and ponder,
Yeah.
which we certainly have on the Camino.
It's a classic Camino story, really. The number of people that we talk to, that you mentioned threshold. Yeah, it's the unfortunate death of a partner. It's recovering from an illness. It's retirement. It's a first grandchild. There's a life event that people want to close a chapter and open a new one,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
what better way to do that by going from A to B, literally. Um, what did the Camino mean to you as a person of faith in terms of a singular religious experience? Did it meet your expectations there?
I think I was completely blown away, Kieran, to be honest. I'm kind of quite an open person and tried not to have expectations, and just go with the flow. I mean, to be honest, the week before I was leaving, I was having like, I can't do this. And my son was very reassuring. And then on my first day, the place I was going for lunch was closed. And I was thinking, oh, you're such a fool. You should never have done this.
Mm.
And then later on that day, I met the two gentlemen, Mike and Des, who had met just outside Oviedo. And we ended up being in the same hotel that night, and we had dinner together, and we walked all the way to Lugo, which was just over 200 kilometres together. And that was a wonderful experience. They're both atheists, and the last thing I am is an evangelical Christian. So we had great conversations. We talked about some very deep things. Sometimes we talked basically about the price of tea, quite light-hearted things. And other times it would be you just walked in silence on your own in the zone. So there was, for me, there was plenty of time to be present, to be aware of um, the numinous, to be aware of God's presence, either on my own or with people. And there was a kind of, for me, a strong feeling of spirituality. I think God's very much in nature. And the Primitivo is very much a walk through nature. There are some roads, there are some tough hills, but there was, yeah, yeah. And
You really feel it.
yeah, when I came to Mass, I'm not Roman Catholic, but I'm fairly ecumenical. And I went to Mass at noon, and that was fine. But I went to Mass on my own in the evening. I think Des had gone home. Mike had dropped off at Lugo, that was planned. And I went on my own, and I'd managed to find a translation of the Mass in English, which I was able to follow. I was able to join in things like Kyrie eleison, Alleluia, and then they sang in Spanish, but I recognised the tune "Lord, You've Come to the Seashore." So yeah.
And you joined in
Yeah,
in English,
yeah,
and everyone
yeah,
else singing in
yeah.
Spanish. Although I assume there were pilgrims from all over the world at the
Yeah,
Mass.
that's right. Yeah, right beside me, there was Americans, and that was one of American veterans, and that was one of the things that struck me was that evening in Mass that people had been doing that since King Alfonso, and they would go on doing it a long time after I've gone. And the reasons for doing it were as broad as that time span. And I just thought you were part of something really big. And God was right there in that. For me, that was quite phenomenal. Yeah, cool.
Faith goes beyond titles and
Yeah,
boundaries.
yeah, absolutely.
We recently had another pilgrim like yourself in an interview, and he talked about going into a mass somewhere along the Camino Frances, and he was an atheist. He had never been, he had not grown up in a religious family, had never had religion in his life. But attending this mass, he could feel a power that was just simply from people gathering together in
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah,
place, and everybody celebrating the
yeah,
cause.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. There's no limits to God. So, yeah.
And then, how did the cathedral in Santiago? How did that feel as
Um,
again from a sort of a religious perspective after this journey?
Um, I think it's quite a place. I think it is a very special place. I worship here in a cathedral in Scotland, in
Mhm.
Dunblane, much smaller. So I'm kind of used to cathedral worship. And of course, I've been a few times to Mass when they've swung the thurible,
Mhm.
and that is quite something. Yeah, yeah. Um, uh, there's yeah. I think there's a lot of feeling there because there's also I have a bit of a fear that if that
Mhm.
came down and hit my head, I would be about for long. But there's kind of awe that these, I think it's five guys that hold on to it to swing it, and it's like wow, that's amazing. So yeah,
Adds some real
uh,
theatre to the whole production,
yeah,
doesn't it?
and there's music. One thing that slightly irritates me is that people put their bags down in seats in the cathedral to keep
Mhm.
seats for their friends. I just think there's something inappropriate about that. And I have, at least on one occasion, got quite het up about it. And then I thought, actually, there's something quite inappropriate about you getting het up. So I've just let it go. Yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. And great. If the Camino can teach you one thing, it's surely about letting go
Yeah. Yeah.
and being
Absolutely.
at peace with yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you'd mentioned before that you didn't really, you tried not to have expectations going into your trip. Was there anything, though, kind of despite yourself, you were surprised by? it might have been the type of people you met, or it might have been the path itself, or it might have been how your trip was organized versus what you talked to other people about? Was there anything that sort of defied whatever expectations you had?
Well, actually, I have subsequently watched. Is it The Way? Is that
Yes.
what it's called? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And people have said to me, "Oh, have you watched The Way?" And I hadn't. I watched it post Camino. And what I would say is, in my opinion, my experience was so much richer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not being critical, but I just think I met so many people. I met a lovely young woman from Russia walking with her Spanish boyfriend. I think that's the thing about the Camino, and everybody I know that's done it said that you meet the same people all the time, because essentially you're going to Santiago de Compostela, so there's only
Yeah.
really one way you can go.
You're
Um,
crossing each other's paths
yeah,
constantly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, it's so lovely. And, you do share a little bit of your story. My view is kind of what was shared in the Camino stays in the Camino.
Mm-hmm.
I met a lovely couple from Oklahoma. As I say, I met Des from Dublin
Mm-hmm.
and Mike from Dorset. They were the people that I sort of walked with most. But even when we were in different hotels, we met other people. We met a lovely Spanish chap called Aiter, who walked with us for a while, and a man called Sandy from Inverness, who seemed to have 6 mothers with him. I mean, they were all younger women who all looked after him, which was superb. And the conversations that you have, I think meeting people is a real privilege. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if you can have a conversation, then that is fantastic as well. And sometimes at quite deep levels. So yeah, I think it is wonderful. I mean, I think that is probably what struck me is this is a way beyond my expectation. And it was just so joyful. And I've got this photograph that I took on my first morning of my first Camino outside the cathedral in Oviedo.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a photograph of me on my last morning as I'm leaving to walk. I think it was just about 10.5 kilometers I had to walk that morning. And I was up early and I got there by 10 o'clock. And by that time, of course, your walking is really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, the two faces are so different. I felt as though really my joy was complete. That's what I would say. At the end of the Camino, my feeling was my joy is complete. And yeah, I think that well, you can't ask for any more than that, can you? So
My heart is full hearing that. That's my joy is complete. Can you say any more than that? The
yeah,
words tell the story.
yeah,
Did you? And I'm actually sorry. Quickly on the you talking about meeting people along the way and sharing these really deep stories. There's something in the element of a church confessional about how people meet, and they would tell each other things that they might not tell close friends,
yeah.
kind of safe in the knowledge that everybody is there in with pure intentions, and ultimately you're not going to meet a lot of these people again. You may choose to stay
No,
in touch, you may not to, but kind of what's said on the Camino is
stays in
said
the
in good
Camino.
faith and kept
Yeah,
in good
yeah,
faith.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's right. I think there is. I mean, walking is getting right alongside people,
Hmm.
because you're walking side by side. And I think if you can get alongside anyone in life, that is a real privilege. Um, and if they share part of their story, I think um, it's only right that you keep that.
Hmm.
Um, you know, um, that's kind of always been the way I've conducted my life. It's the way my parents brought me up.
Hmm.
If someone tells you something and asks you not to tell anyone, then you don't. And I very much adhere to that in life. So I don't see any reason to do something different
Yeah.
on a walk. So
No, that's very right, and it's very in the spirit of the occasion.
yeah,
Um, so, an interesting statistic I wanted to bring to your attention and to the attention of the audience is that in general, for many recent decades that the statistics office in the Cathedral de Santiago has been recording the pilgrims coming through the door at the cathedral, there have been a majority of women that have been walked through the door of the cathedral looking to get their Compostela. And that those statistics were borne out last year. There's 53% of something in the realm of 450,000 pilgrims. So 53% of them were women. Do you have any insight, or do you have any sort of theories why it might be a preferred trail for women, or why it might be popular amongst women travelers?
Well, so there's kind of some practical things. So it's a clear path, you know. So if you're feeling a bit hesitant, then there is a support structure, how to go. There's a whole variety of them. I think women are, I don't want to sound sexist, and I can think of loads of exceptions, but women tend to be more in touch with their feelings. Men sometimes are afraid of feelings and somehow push them down.
I think that's a reasonable thing to say, and that does play out.
Yeah. I was a teacher, and I would always say, if a girl passes her exams, she cries and eats chocolate with her friends. If she fails her exams, she cries and eats chocolate with her friends. If she gets dumped, she cries and eats chocolate with her friends. If she dumps someone, she cries and eats chocolate with her friends. And for all of the above, I don't mean this literally, a guy gets drunk, a boy gets drunk and punches a wall. And it's about, girls somehow, and it's got to be something about parenting and schooling, I guess. And I'm a parent and I was involved in schooling, so I have to put my hand up and take responsibility for that. That women are more able to be in touch with their feelings, and take that time out. Guys maybe go and do it around, they might run a marathon, I guess, or they would chase a ball up and down with another 10 people on the same side, up and down a football pitch or rugby pitch or whatever. Yeah. So I suppose
I think I've heard the phrase, kind of men will do anything, any activity, no matter how dangerous, no matter how ludicrous, just to not to actually have to talk to somebody else
about them.
About anything but about their feelings most urgently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, we know of many exceptions to that. So, yeah.
So you think there's something in it being such an emotional journey, and you needing to be open to that it just, women naturally gravitate towards something that has that powerful evocative that evocative power on them. Okay.
Yeah. Although, I mean, did I think about that when I walked it? Or before I walked it, did I think? I guess to an extent, but maybe not really the full awareness. I think you've got to do it,
Sure.
So,
Maybe it wasn't your primary motivation, but and in getting what you'd said about not having any expectations, I think it would be difficult not to have any expectations at all. The Camino it's a well-known pilgrimage. I'm surprised you hadn't seen the movie. Actually, that's usually most people's gateway to the Camino is watching the way. But there would have been any amount of information you could have you could have taken in about the Camino.
I suppose by saying not having any expectations, I didn't have any personal expectations for myself, except I felt it was something that, to use the phrase, that it was right in terms of my spiritual journey to do it at that time. So I'm sure I was aware that that God would be present and would have some message to deliver.
And that you might see Martin Sheen somewhere along the way. So can I quickly ask you about when you were going to plan your first Camino, what were kind of some of the steps you went through did you start off thinking maybe I'll try to do it myself and book everything myself? Then how did you find a tour operator, and how did you end up working with Follow the Camino?
Well, I never really thought I would plan it all myself. I don't think I had got that far. When my son did it, he carried his luggage and stayed in albergues. So I don't really like carrying loads of weight. So I'll push weights at the gym, but that's a bit different. So that was never going to happen. Now that I'm a widow, I sleep on my own, and I'm at the age and stage when I got up to go to the loo, and I didn't really want to be doing that in a dormitory. So these were kind of things, and I suppose I did what lots of people do for lots of things. I Googled, and I found various tour companies. Maybe Santiago Ways was another one. I think I maybe got a quote from them. But I loved Barbara and Jade, and they were like my pals. So I would phone up and they would go, "Oh, Christine, how are you?" And of course, Jade stayed not too far from here, so it was "Oh, how is it doing today?" And she would talk about being around Castle, la 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 la. So, and I had loads of questions, and they had all really helpful answers. And sometimes you use the words, "Oh, I don't know, or I'm not sure. Let me look into that." And I really appreciate that because that's honest. So yeah.
Well, that's certainly one thing we go for here is we like to claim that we're the experts, but if we don't know something, we will absolutely we have the resources, and we have the want to help our customers. So we will go out and we'll find that answer for them. And if that answer isn't Follow the Camino, sometimes that's not in our best interest. So we'll point the customer in a different direction if that's where they need to go to have the best experience.
Yeah.
But we're glad that you traveled with us, and I'm certainly Jade may be watching this, and hopefully she can see all the good work that she did is paid off in the end.
And I have said to people, because as you know, I couldn't walk this year, the Del Norte, and your company were very helpful and very creative in how they enabled my deposit to go to a friend's balance. So that was wonderful. Did unfortunately give them a bit of hassle because it meant they had to transfer money from Ireland to the UK, which is not always easy, but they were very gracious about it. So I'm very grateful.
We got there in the end. Brilliant. And we'll hopefully see you on the Del Norte. Like I said earlier, hopefully we'll see you there in the spring.
Yeah, well, I kind of, somebody said, "Will you do it in the spring?" And I said, "Well, I would like to think so, but life has taught me, don't plan ahead. Let's just see what shimmers in the new year." So I do believe that your attention is drawn to things and they shimmer for you, and almost they persist if you are thinking, "Oh, but actually something else." Sometimes I think, God just brings your attention sometimes where you hadn't been expecting it to go. So I'm open at the moment.
I like that. Like a little glint of silver in a field or something. It'll catch your eye and you'll be drawn to it.
Yeah.
And I want to quickly ask about your husband. Did you have any trepidation going on this trip without him? You'd mentioned you'd never been on any long distance walks before, and this would have, of course, been the first time you were doing that without your husband. So was there any trepidation there?
Not in that sense, because so the first walk I did was in 2022, and Robert, my husband, died in 2016. So I had been used to traveling on my own in that time. So yeah, that didn't give me the fear, and I would go out and walk here. We had spaniels, until a few years ago. So even when I was widowed, I used to go out and walk them in all weathers and all times of day and night. Well, not really all times of day and night. I wasn't walking at 3 a.m, but you know what I mean. So yeah.
Enough of the time that you wouldn't have taken yourself out if they weren't scratching at the door.
Mm?
Enough that you would have taken them out enough times when you wouldn't have gone out yourself. It was That's the great thing about having a dog. If it's driving rain outside, or it's cold and windy and you'd rather stay in, they still need to go.
Yeah, as some wise person once said, there's no such thing as bad weather, simply inappropriate clothing. So yeah.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your training plan and how you kind of prepared for the Camino in terms of packing, researching? How did you mentally prepare for it?
In terms of training, what I decided to do was not worry about distance, but worry about walking. So I just walked. So if I was going, so we are 4 miles here from Dunblane. So if you're going into Glasgow or Edinburgh, you would get a bus or a train from Dunblane. So I would walk to the train, walk back from the train or the bus. So I walked to church in Dunblane. So that just became, I would walk to Dunblane and get shopping, and with a backpack then obviously carrying stuff. So I did that, and then I built in some, obviously I would do longer walks for pleasure with friends. And here in Scotland, we're right in the middle. You can't go too far without doing, you don't necessarily do a mountain, but you do humps, or hills or rays or inclines, whatever you want to call them. And then I built in some longer walks, and I did, I think, did I do it? The first one, I don't think I did a mountain, but I just, I know, just putting one leg in front of another, you can get up. So the Primitivo one day, I think we were as high as Snowdon. So
building in those little bumps really helped by the time you're on top of.
And I took poles as well. I found them really helpful. I took waterproofs, which we needed just, I think, twice actually, on that walk. But I am very bad. I am a packer of just in case. So
there's two kinds of person in the world. There's two kinds of people in the world: the just in case, and there's I definitely won't need it.
Yeah, I think as a wise man in Port Marnock said to me, you're better looking at it than looking for it. And I think that is fantastic. That is absolutely correct. So I do need to learn, not just for the Camino, but to kind of pare back what one takes with one. But yeah, I like clean clothes though. So yeah, it's kind of getting that balance. So that was one of my concerns about the Del Norte. How would I get my clothes clean? But people manage it. So yeah, I'm sure all over Spain there are laundrettes. So yeah.
Oh, there's laundrettes and there's socks hanging out of windows all along the Camino. That's the real, that's the real Scotch shells that people don't talk about.
I was one of these people with my socks hanging out everywhere, like tied to my ruck, my day pack, my pair of socks on occasion and things like that. Yeah. So yeah.
Good on you. You do what you got to do to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I certainly found the poles helpful. So especially on the hills, I think, an older woman with her knees. Not that I have a particular knee problem, but I just think for your knees, they're helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. You only get, my mother always said, you only get one set of knees, so be kind to them. If
wise words. Yeah.
And so the Camino is definitely a trip you would encourage for women travelers to take, all ages, all stages. It's got something for everybody.
I would absolutely say that. It's, do training. Of course, I don't think you can get up one morning, never having done any exercise, and say, I'm going to walk the Camino. Pay attention. I looked at some guides. I think you published one yourself, actually, about, or on your website, about what sort of training to be doing. And I kind of paid attention to that, but also kind of adapted it to suit my circumstances. And I would say because not necessarily every day in life, do you go for a decent walk? I thought walking every day was going to be important. So yeah, and I got a few blisters, so take some Compeed. Although on my second Camino de Finisterre, I get no blisters. And somebody I know from here, a friend from here, Anne, she is another Camino buddy, and she's not gone with Follow the Camino, but she told me to put talcum on my feet, very liberal. So I left a trail of talcum powder behind my hotels and on the Finisterre, but I didn't get a blister. So yeah, very good. And I did that. I walked the Finisterre. It was a different set of circumstances. It's only, well, we did it in 4 days, and I walked with one of my original Camino buddies, Des, and one of his friends who's Irish but lives in San Francisco. So that was lovely. I'd never met him before, so that's someone I'm now in regular contact with as well. So very nice.
Brilliant. All about building those contacts.
Yeah.
Just for those watching the live stream, I've put the link to the article that Christine mentioned, the training plan for your Camino. You can find that at followthecamino.com/blog and Camino training plan. So if you want some advice about how to build up your fitness for a Camino, you can follow that link there or find it on our website. Christine, I've got one last question for you. Do you have any general advice for someone who wants to do the Camino? It could be about a training plan. It could be about what to pack. It could be about the weather. It could be about mentally preparing yourself. It could be the best dish you had or glass of wine you had. But is there any kind of one piece of advice you want to leave our audience with?
What I would say is do it. You can do it. And wherever you are, whoever you are, if you want to do it, you can do it. I think get a training plan, get decent footwear. I used a company called Tizos in Scotland. They're extremely helpful. I think most outdoor shops are helpful. Don't wear Skechers. Don't wear Nike. Wear proper walking trainers or walking boots, but ones that will suit your feet. And if you go to a proper outdoor specialist, they will be able to advise you. So I think what you wear on your feet is important. I think your luggage, even as an overpacker, on the day-to-day, don't overpack your day pack. And I would say if you can afford it, then getting your luggage carried is well worth it. So yeah, I would say that for me is a big positive. I know people would tell me that I'm not a pure pilgrim because I didn't stay in hostels, and I had my luggage carried, but I think pilgrimage comes from your heart, not what you not your accessories. So I think it's your right intention, and doing it for what is the right reasons for you, then you can do it.
Christine, that is such a beautiful sentiment to end on. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you to everybody who has watched along with us today. Christine, an absolute pleasure. And we look forward to seeing you on the Camino sometime very soon. So buen Camino, and thank you very much.
Buen Camino. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.